Tyler didn't knock. He never knocked. That morning he simply pushed open the back kitchen door of the estate like he'd done every weekday since his shift began 5 years ago, and walked into silence so heavy it felt like wet cement in the lungs. The counters were spotless. Coffee still warm. But the air was wrong. And then, from somewhere past the hallway lined with modern art no one in the house ever looked at, came the soft, uneven cry of a baby. Not the needy wail of hunger or discomfort, but something different. Something closer to grief. Something no one talks about because they don't believe babies feel like that. The child was alone. In the nursery, door slightly ajar, sunlight leaking in through half-shut blinds, dust particles hanging midair like they were frozen in time. No nanny, no mother, no sound except that broken cry, then silence. Tyler, trained to keep his head down, to sweep and vanish like the help always does, stepped into the room. That's when he saw it. The monitor screen, it wasn't showing the nursery feed. Instead, it was playing footage from 5 days ago, a grainy black and white clip of someone walking backward into the room, holding the baby, whispering something unintelligible before vanishing from frame, and never walking back out. No cut in the footage, no one else entered. No exit, just static. You've probably already felt it, like this story isn't meant to be told out loud, like the facts don't line up because someone doesn't want them to. Maybe you're wondering why Tyler didn't go straight to the police. Why the millionaire who owned the home, Charles Whitmore, didn't release a statement. Why every trace of the woman who worked that nursery, nanny, caretaker, housekeeper, was wiped within hours. Or maybe you're wondering what the baby said. 2 nights later, when the crying stopped and the child pointed at an empty corner of the room and whispered a name, Noel, a name no one in the house had ever spoken. Not aloud, not even once. It should have ended there. Should have been dismissed as coincidence, stress, sleep deprivation. But then came the voicemail. Not to Tyler, not to the family, but to a man named Dean Hargrove, who used to investigate military psychops before his sudden resignation. The message was 5 seconds long, nearly inaudible under the hiss of interference. But Tyler, still sweeping, still pretending not to notice the tightening walls of this story, heard it when Hargrove played it back. Hands trembling, a child's voice saying asterisk, she remembers now. Asterisk, and here's the part no one can explain. The next morning, the millionaire sat silently in his living room, eyes bloodshot, hands folded like a man waiting for a verdict. He looked at Tyler, not like a boss, not like a man with power, but like someone afraid of what his own house was about to show him. He nodded toward the nursery monitor. The feed had changed again. No child, no crib. Just that same grainy footage, now looping in reverse. But the real question, the one no one dares ask, the one buried under money, power, and the facade of normal life in perfect homes, is this. Asterisk, 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 who was holding the baby? Asterisk, asterisk, because it wasn't the mother. It wasn't the nanny. And the woman in the footage had been declared dead 8 years ago, and Tyler Heat hasn't shown up since. It wasn't the mother. It wasn't the nanny. And the woman in the footage had been declared dead 8 years ago. Tyler hadn't left the estate. Not really. His car was still there, parked exactly where it always was. Driver's door slightly ajar, like he'd stepped out mid-thought. The weird part, the windshield was smeared. From the inside, palm prints, small, like a child's, overlapping in a frantic scrawl that trailed off toward the back seat where no one should have been. At first, everyone assumed he'd just walked off. Stress, maybe, or guilt if you believed the whispers that he'd taken something from the witness. A USB drive, a file, something that wasn't his to touch. But here's the thing no one talks about. Tyler wasn't the first to vanish from that house. People remember what's convenient. That's the truth no one wants to admit. People forget what makes them uncomfortable. Like the woman before him, Sophia, nanny 29, said she heard voices through the baby monitor. Said the baby was mouthing things no infant should know. A week later, she stopped showing up. The family told everyone she'd taken a job out of state. Only, her apartment lease was never canceled. Her toothbrush still in the cup. Her keys still on the hook. Just gone. But this isn't about them anymore. This is about the thing that began creeping in after the monitor feed looped in reverse. At 3:12 a.m., exactly 2 days after Tyler disappeared, the monitor lit up again. No footage, just audio. It was subtle, quiet enough to almost miss. A mechanical click, then static, then a voice, whispered, familiar. Asterisk, you saw it too, didn't you? Asterisk, the housekeeper, June, was the one who heard it. She didn't speak much English, but she played the message on her phone over and over. Not because she was scared, but because she was sure the voice was her daughter's. Her daughter had been missing for 6 years. Her face still plastered on grocery store corkboards across the state. June swore it was her. She cried right there in the kitchen, dropped to her knees in front of that monitor like it was some cursed altar. The family fired her the next morning. No police report, no questions. They say madness doesn't show up all at once. That it's slow, like water boiling around you while you sit still and try to rationalize the heat. Charles Whitmore began losing time. Not forgetting, just misplacing it. Ours entire mornings. He'd wake up in different clothes, sometimes with soil under his fingernails. One time, he found a voicemail on his phone he didn't remember recording. He was whispering something in the dark. Not English, just syllables. Over and over. A chant. Maybe a warning. The file was corrupted. He tried to play it for his lawyer, but it had erased itself. And this is where she enters. Hannah. Not a cop, not family. Just someone who claimed she knew Tyler. Said they'd worked together, that she'd trained him in facilities maintenance years ago back in Pittsburgh. But there's no record of her employment there. None still. She walked into the estate like she belonged, there like the walls knew her, like the air recognized her. She said she came to check on him, said she'd had dreams. But it wasn't what she said that made people doubt her. It was the way she looked at the baby. Not with concern, not confusion, but recognition. She told Charles to check the crawl space beneath the nursery. That's the part that still messes with him. Because how the hell would she know about that? Even he hadn't remembered it existed, had it sealed years ago after the remodel. But sure enough, behind the baseboard heater, there it was. Low, dark, dust, so old it crackled. Inside, nothing but a baby blanket folded perfectly square, and an analog cassette recorder still ticking faintly. No one had seen a cassette recorder in years. The buttons were worn down like someone had been pressing rewind over and over and over again. Charles hit play. Silence, then a rustle, then she's still hungry. A second voice, faint, unmistakably Charles's own. I told you not to speak her name. He dropped the recorder. But here's the thing. He doesn't remember ever saying those words. Not in life, not in sleep. And no one had touched that crawl space in years. From that moment on, nothing was stable. The baby Olivia started reacting to empty corners of rooms, crying when no one entered but stopping only when the lights went off. Guests would visit and forget why they'd come. One family friend, a therapist, spent 40 minutes pacing the foyer with his keys in his hand before asking, "Whose house is this again?" Reality was unraveling, slowly, quietly, but without mercy. Charles began hearing the audio glitches outside the monitor, no on phone calls, radios, even the oven timer. Snippets of voices caught mid-sentence, unfinished thoughts like tape spliced from somewhere else. Don't remember being born. But the woman under the floor says, wake up before it reaches her. Hannah never left. She claimed the baby needed protection. Claimed Tyler had known too much. That he'd tried to stop it but couldn't. She said she could, said she'd seen the tapes. That she'd lived through this once before, and Charles believed her, until he found her in the basement, standing in the dark with the monitor clutched to her chest, whispering a name over and over, Noelle, Noelle, like a prayer. The baby was upstairs, alone. He confronted her, demanded to know who she really was. Hannah just smiled, wiped dust from the corner of the screen, and said, "You've been asking the wrong questions, Charles. It's not about who she is. It's about *A, already decided." But it was glitching, showing its seams. And then, just like that, Hannah disappeared. Same as Tyler, gone from the estate. No trace, only not quite. Because her voice began coming through Olivia's baby monitor 2 nights later, faint but constant. A whisper looped endlessly, emotionless and raw. Ask him what happened in 1997. Charles hasn't spoken of that year in decades. It was before the house, before the money. Back when he was stationed overseas. Something went wrong. A classified operation. A bunker collapse. He never talks about it, not because he doesn't remember but because he does. And now the baby, barely able to walk, has started pulling books off the shelf, stacking them in the exact pattern of that old bunker's entrance. How would she know that shape? How would anyone? There's one last thing, and if you're still watching, maybe you're the kind of person who needs the truth, even when it's screaming not to be heard. The footage from the nursery, it's changed again. And if you scrub back to the first chapter, freeze the frame when Charles looks at the monitor. You're already in it. You've always been dotted. Started with the symbols. Not ones Charles saw you did. The strange etching that flashed in the reflection behind the baby's crib at 3:41 in Chapter 1. The number scrawled on the side of the old tape recorder, 212AOS97. You didn't notice it then, or maybe you did. But your brain filed it under set design, or random detail, or someone else will figure it out. But now, weeks later, it's reappeared on a rusted street sign in a background shot from Chapter 2, carved into the wrist of the woman rocking the baby in the monitor, reflected in the glass of Charles's study window. That code wasn't background, it was for you. Because you're not just watching this, you're being watched watching it. Charles wasn't the first to find the truth, and he's not the last. There are others. They've never appeared in the footage, never spoken out loud, but they've left things behind. Letters with no return, address, symbols, scratched behind drywall, half-recorded voicemails that cut off mid-sentence. One was found in Oregon, sealed inside a vent in an abandoned nursery. Another discovered in a Midwestern library's lost and found box, a VHS tape wrapped in newspaper from 2003, playing only static until exactly 13:08, when a frame flashes showing Charles's face but older, bruised, and whispering, *, don't let her forget you again. They call themselves the Still Ones asterisk. Or maybe that's just what Charles named them in the notebook he found tucked beneath his mattress 2 days ago, it in his own handwriting. But with thoughts he swears he never had. They don't speak aloud. They don't gather in basements. They exist between NA. They've been following this for years. Watching it evolve, watching you come closer. One of them even left a drawing on Charles's desk, a spiral. Always a spiral, interrupted at the edge. As if reality could only wind itself so far before something had to snap. Charles found a burner phone beside the spiral. One number in the call log, he dialed it. The call connected. No ringing, no voice, just breathing. And then a sound faint, almost mechanical. Click. WHIR. Click. A projector spinning. And then a voice. Yours, I saw this already. He dropped the phone. The truth began leaking in, not like water through a crack, but like gas, colorless, odorless, altering the atmosphere of everything. He started remembering their memories. Not just his. Dreams, not his own. Waking up with phrases and languages he didn't speak. La niña recuerda lo que no vivimos. The girl remembers what we didn't live. That's when the third presence began making itself known, not in the rooms, but in the pauses between scenes. The skips in the footage. The distortion in the audio that didn't match any known codec. At exactly 1923, in the monitor footage, there's a single flash frame, one that looks like nothing at first, but enhance the exposure, slow it to 1/10th speed, and you'll see a room, a wall of photographs, and your face. Multiple angles, surveillance from webcams, elevator mirrors, street cams, all compiled. All recent. You weren't watching. The story. You are the story. You've always been part of it. Across the country, more evidence emerges. A retired signal analyst from Baltimore posts a blog entry titled, "They said it was just an echo," describing looped audio in military comes back in 1997. In a base connected to a failed experiment called AOS 212. The same numbers on the tape. She was found dead 2 days later. Blunt force trauma. No signs of a struggle. But in her apartment, spiral symbols drawn in candle suit on every mirror. Her computer screen frozen on a paused video. A nursery monitor. Then there's the man in Nevada, a sleep study subject who began sketching a woman holding a baby night after night. Waking up screaming the name Noel, with blood under his fingernails and no memory of how it got there. Security footage from his room showed him speaking in a female voice while asleep, whispering things that translated to asterisk. The memory is not hers, it's ours. His footage has never been released. Charles thought he was the epicenter. That this house, this monitor, this child, they were the anomaly. But the anomaly is spreading, or worse, it's looping back. All of this has happened before, and you've seen it. Not just once. Check the background again. In Chapter 2, when Charles descends the basement stairs, there's a mirror. Pause it, look closely. Your reflection is already there. This isn't fiction. It's remembering. And now, the third perspective steps in. Not Charles, not the child, but someone else. Someone beneath the feed, beneath the noise. A voice, layered beneath the static that's been buried in every recording. They finally spoke at 3:03 a.m. on the monitor 2 nights ago. Only once. Their voice came through distorted, low, layered, like it had to push through 20 years of denial just to reach you. The wrong one remembered. No name, no face. But that voice has been echoing since the beginning. Some believe they're one of the still ones. Others say they're the observer outside the loops, forced to witness the cycle endlessly, a survivor of the original memory breach. But their warning is clear. Asterisk, someone remembered something they weren't supposed to, and that act corrupted the timeline for everyone else. Asterisk, Charles, if he still exists in the present, is no longer the man we began with. You can see it in his eyes. Not fear but resignation. Like a man who's read the last page of a book and knows the ending has already happened, he's just reliving it now. The baby, she hasn't aged. Her size, her voice, her gaze, exactly the same across the footage. No one noticed. No one wanted to notice. And Hannah, she left something behind. A photo of a group of children from 1997. Military camp, facility 212. Second row, third from the left, you again, younger, smiling, wearing the same shirt you wore the day you watched Chapter 1. Your name scrawled on the back. Not as viewer, not as Charles, but as subject. Experiment record AOS 212. You've been asking who Noel is. What if she was never the mystery? What if she's the mirror? Because here's what they never released. The experiment wasn't about sleep, or memory retention, or behavioral conditioning. It was about transferring consciousness through observation. The more you watched, the more it aligned. And the final proof. Rewatch the first chapter. Pause at 011. In the reflection behind the baby's crib, right before Tyler enters. There's a figure, watching, face blurred. But the outline, your body. You were right all along. They lied. You didn't. Remember this. You're reliving it, and it's almost time for you to return.